Welcome, Wanderers, to the Masters of Sanctuary Clipcast. I'm your host, Cliptis, and here with me today is a fellow Mobalytics creator, someone that is working in the gaming industry itself, and a creator of some incredibly fun builds. This is Imortilize. Immortalize, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Clip. Cheers, guys.
All right, so we're going to get started today. To get everybody familiar with you, and tell me a little bit about yourself, why you game, and what makes Diablo the game for you.
Okay, all right. Okay, as Clip's already said, I'm a full-time game developer, have been 15 years, work mainly in the mobile space. I work with some of the most talented people in the UK mobile industry. Some of these guys works on Theme Hospital, Dungeon Keeper, Theme Park, and all going all the way up to modern day AAA titles. Some of them works on the Diablo franchise back in the day, so I'm very lucky. Cool. I've managed to work with some very cool people. But so the people who do come and check out anything I do, I'm also basically full-time content creating on the side. And I know Clip knows a little bit about this as well. It can be fairly brutal, but I really enjoy it. And predominantly covering the Diablo space. I've been gaming since I was about 5 years old. So everything gaming, I'm all things gaming, making games, breeding games. I love getting into what makes games tick, the fundamental mechanics, what makes them fun, what doesn't make them fun. And I think games like Diablo, they lend themselves very well to this. My first ever game, funnily enough, was Duke Nukem 2D on the floppy disk, and my dad taught me to install it when I was 5 years old through the command line, and which I think is quite funny. Yeah, so that's pretty fun. But awesome. But ever since I was super young, honestly, it's mainly just been I've played Diablo 1, D2, D3, D4, probably thousands of hours in all of them, like many of us have, and still continue to enjoy them all for their own merits, and they're super fun. So, what makes Diablo the game for me? There's many games I enjoy, but Diablo 2 particularly was almost like one of the godfathers of the genre in terms of pushing it forward when it came out. The game of its time still stands the test of time for a lot of people. D3 and D4 have come out of it in more, in new approaches to that genre. Some people like it, some people don't. But there's a lot of people that do like both of those games for their own merits. And I just always like the fact that you could play a game. It's not too difficult to play, but hard to master. And you can master these games, and you can play it in so many different ways. You've got so many different classes and builds you can play. And obviously these days you can get cycles of updates, so these can all be changed up as well. So it keeps the game feeling a bit more fresh than, say, back 20 years ago when that wasn't quite so easy to do. And it really plays into how my mind works, I suppose. I just like to get in and figure out all these weird interactions, come up with something different, and it just makes you're playing the same game, but it feels different to play. And not all games are designed to do that. Some are designed to be a coherent package of an experience. You play it from beginning to end, and you can play it in a few different ways with different setups of skills, but for the most part, the game is the same. And Diablo, it's sort of different in that way to me. And it's actually, particularly Diablo 4, I find it's a very social, oriented game.
Yeah.
Of all of the games in ARPGs, it's definitely one of the ones that is more focused on playing together. And I'm quite a social gamer these days. I quite like playing with people. And
same.
I feel like it really lends itself to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It definitely is a much different feel when you get on and you play with a whole bunch of people, and they did a good job of making it a nice, easy transition from solo into a group play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the next question we have here is about some meta builds. Now, I know that you do a lot of off-meta builds, which are really, really fun to see and watch you put together. So meta builds are very slightly controversial, just in the sense that a lot of people completely swear off playing the meta builds. So how do you feel about playing meta versus off meta, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I get asked this a lot, to be honest. Meta builds are meta builds for a reason, right? They're strong, in some cases overtuned, which is inevitable in games with so many interactions going on. But they generally perform the best. They're the fastest. They're the strongest. They can do the best content in the best way. And some people want to do that. So, there's nothing wrong with these builds. They're meta for a reason. And honestly, I mean, off meta builds will inherently not really compete with them in that way because they're off meta. They're either not, they can't go as strong, they don't play as well, they just don't have the fundamental design behind them that allows them to be as powerful. But I do feel like the off meta builds can compete in like a fun factor way. And
I agree.
To me, that comes down to what people actually want from the game. Some people do want to be the best. That is their idea of fun in games, and that's, they're competitive gamers, and there's a lot of people out there that way, and that's really cool. I love watching other gamers, pushing the highest pits and doing them the fastest, and it makes me me laugh sometimes how quickly some people could do some of these things. But for me, I quite like the challenge of taking a build that for most people will not necessarily take it all the way to the end game or be quite hard to achieve doing the whole game. And I quite like the challenge of being able to do that, even if it doesn't do it the best. And I do find with off-meta builds, some of them have very unique playstyles or mechanic interactions, which you don't always get in the meta builds. The meta builds, a lot of them typically end up being one-button builds because there's something there that makes them very, very strong. For one reason or another. And so they're quite easy to play, easy to blast and such. But yeah, some of these off-meta builds that I've played recently, they don't scale the damage in the same way, for example, or they just play differently. And that keeps these sort of games interesting to me after playing so many hours on so many different types of these games. There's only so many times I can play a Whirlwind Bar before I want to play something else for a bit, or something else along those lines. So to me, that's what I find fun. That's not what everyone will find fun, but I try to keep a balanced attitude to it because I don't think it's right to bash on either. I think, some people just want to play different things. That's totally fine. And if you can complete the whole game doing it, that's really cool. If you want to go blast the highest content, you can go grab a mesa build. They'll probably do it a lot easier. And
easier. Yeah, definitely.
And that's kind of where it comes down to for me, I guess. At the end of the day, I always recommend to people to follow the fun. Like wherever is fun for you, you should play that. If people come in and say, "What's the strongest build?" or "What do you find the most fun build?" the first question I ask back is that, because I could go tell them to play my favorite build, but they'll hate it, or I could go tell them to play a meta build and they'll hate it. It's more about what is it you're looking for, and I think that's more important for me personally.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. That's when people pop in and say, "Hey, what's the best bar build?" That's the first question I ask too. Is depends on how you like to play the game, what you want to get out of it. Do you want to do the highest pit? Do you want to have the most fun? Do you want to go the fastest? It's all really good questions to ask. So today we're going to ask about the Spiritborn. Now, you've come up some pretty fun Spiritborn builds from Rake to Thorns. What was it about this class that really kind of drew you to the class?
So, funnily enough, my favorite class on Diablo 3 was the Monk. Now, obviously, the Spiritborn is different to the Monk, but it does have a lot of crossovers and similarities. It feels inspired by Monk, but taken with a slightly new sort of direction with different themes around it. It definitely feels quite similar in terms of the way you lock on, and you've got lots of mobility in your skills to lock on and move around, and the Monk had that in D3. So I really liked that. I liked the punchiness of the skills, which you do get. And I actually quite liked the, at least when they sort of marketed the class, I quite liked like all of the sort of spirit themes and stuff, and the concept that you've got these four very like kind of unique play styles. Now, how that's actually ended up playing out in the grand scheme of things, and maybe there needs to be some extra balance there, as like there will be in all classes. There's obviously just a few builds that most people played, and the rest has kind of been sidelined for a lot of it. But the concepts and the feel and the visuals of it all look really cool. So I mean, it's definitely my kind of play style, more than some of the other classes. Most people tend to gravitate towards one or two, and that's what they tend to play. I do currently feel like it's one of the better design classes overall. I know that's a very subjective sort of statement, but I think, taking out of the out of the equation that there's stuff that's very powerful and all that, I feel like there's certain things they've done with that class they could really do with going back and doing a pass on the other classes with. So the things I usually say is, and they've started to do it, is the rank 5 maxing out a skill and getting an extra little bonus to it. Something to incentivize you to max out a skill.
Yeah.
It gives you an opportunity to do something unique with that skill, but it also gives you that incentive to want to go all in on those skills. I feel like they've added things in there that, allow you to manipulate a skill and it become multiple different types or such. So it unlocks all these different interactions with certain particular aspects and weapons. And they've started to again do this with other classes as well. But I feel like that's something it feels like the class was definitely loved on a lot more. And I guess they had more time to do that because it was the only one they released with that package of the game.
Yeah.
So I feel like the other classes really could benefit from that as well. It's got some very interesting mechanics. There's a few classes that have got thorns in it, particularly, but it's one of the only classes I've played that truly can use it in a way that doesn't feel bad to use it. Because thorns, normally you're waiting to be hit. And I did that on a barb way back. And that's fun until you go against something that doesn't really hit you often and you can't do anything.
Yes. Yes.
While the Spiritborn has the ability to be able to make it you can actually make it you can activate it through your skills and stuff. So you can use something else to be your damage type, and that I find that's the sort of stuff that interests me, I guess, from a high level. The different play styles are nice. I actually think it's quite a well-rounded class as well. It's got the mobility, it can do the damage, it has some pretty decent defense. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best at any of them, but it's pretty good at all of them. So in terms of a starter class, it's actually one of the better ones for new people to play because it's not difficult to pick up and just play and not feel weak in any particular way. And you can kind of play in leveling, you can pretty much play any build you like and you'll be fine. It's only really in a very end game you get more limited, I'd say, because certain things just can't scale the same way.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty versatile class. It's pretty cool the way that they did the interactions. I really liked it. So one question I did have, because when I got to sit down and theory craft this class before we even got to try it, that was actually, I found it a lot of fun because we've never played a class before and we got to just like, maybe what if? What was that like for you?
I had a lot of fun. A lot of late night Discord chats with people who were doing the same thing, throwing ideas around. And I imagine if and when we're blessed with something else in the future, it will be the same again. It's just they marketed it very well. They gave us just enough so that we were getting hyped about it. And I had a lot of fun with it. And season 6 obviously ended up being a bit overshadowed by a bug, which basically meant all theory craft went out the window.
All of it,
unfortunately. But I tell you what, and we'll get onto this in a bit, I imagine, but season 7 has meant I've gone back to those because even though some things have changed, those original things I put together have been more valid this season because of the bugs being fixed. And that's been quite fun. So I've been playing Spiritborn quite a bit this season, regardless of how strong it is, because I think I'm now playing it for the way it was actually intended to be played.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And that's been kind of fun. Yeah.
So what was your favorite Spiritborn build then that you played?
My favorite Spiritborn builds? Well, I was thinking about this, to be honest. I've played 4 or 5 different builds pretty thoroughly, Rake, Touch of Death, Quill Volley. I honestly think my favorite was the one I did mainly this season, which was just a pure Thorns Gorilla sort of build. Did end up swapping the ultimate out of Gorilla. That has a fundamental mechanical issue with it right now where you cannot scale the damage off of it. They added the ability for it to do Thorns damage, but it doesn't multiply. There's only one way to multiply the damage enough to compete right now, and that's using the Rock Splitter. I managed to get it to do some pretty decent content for a build that cannot use crit and overpower. And I think I was hitting for 30 billion. So it's not too bad. I was able to clear everything in the game pretty comfortably. And I think the thing that was super fun for me about that was it felt really good to play. Not difficult to play, super easy to level. You can absolutely blast. It's a really good hardcore leveler. And once you got to the end game, it was like I had a lot of fun figuring out what did work with Thorns and what didn't. And not a lot of stuff did actually, funnily enough. But the things that did, once I figured out what things did, we were able to get it to a point where it was actually decent. And really, the only thing it's missing now is the ability to get the base thorns. If we could get the base thorns higher, which you can't actually get much of, because you predict the razor plate's the biggest source, and that only gives you 12,000 maybe.
Yeah, it's not
and
much.
That's like your base number. So, if they gave us a bit more base thorns, that build would actually be competitive. It would be up there at least as a secondary down from meta, if not even potentially a meta build, and it's definitely unique in the source of damage. There are not many builds out there that don't use crit and overpower as their main source of damage. So I really enjoyed that because it's just so different to anything I played. Had a lot of people interested in that build because it's different.
Yeah,
I guess
something new. Yeah, that's cool. All right, so you mentioned that it's actually really great for leveling, and the Spiritborn is a great starter class. So if somebody was thinking about hopping onto the Spiritborn for the very first time, what would be 3 short tips that you would give them before they hopped onto the class?
Yeah, I spent a long time thinking about what the best things were to say here, really. But I'd say try out all the different skills, because most of them do work, and it's a really good opportunity to try out the skills. Find what you like playing with. Most of them will work in the end game, to be honest, to some level. Explore the class and what it has to offer. It has actually got some pretty unique mechanics, as we've mentioned already with the thorns. There's some other ones in there. I won't want to ruin everything for everyone, but that hasn't played it already. But But it is quite an interesting class to play around with, loads of mobility, so you'll be able to move around and blast pretty easy. And get some practice in for Season 8, because they were pretty strong on the PTR, even without the boss powers. So there's the new builds may need some love, but some of the other builds available were pretty strong on the PTR. So
Which builds did you get to play on the PTR?
I didn't actually personally get a chance to play much, but I did see some people I know who did the most damage on the PTR, like 600 trillion. It was with boss powers, but if you took them out of the equation, they were still up there competitive with the other builds that would be competitive without the boss powers, like the poison, rushing claw builds. You can scale the damage with rushing claw a lot more in the new season, and so on and so on. There's loads of stuff. So it should be pretty decent next season. I don't think anyone right now knows what will be the best builds next season.
Of course,
but it should be decent. It'll be a great leveler as well, to be honest. And it is definitely going to be slower next season for a lot of people to get to that epitome level of aspirational content. So
so Spiritborn seems like a pretty good choice for your first leveling class in Season 8 then.
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good, yeah.
Great. Okay. So finally, final question for you today before we talk a little bit about you. How do you feel about the state of the game right now, and where is it heading in the future?
Oh, the amount of times I've had this conversation with people, and I'm sure you have as well, Clip. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, look, I'm sure you have as well, Clip. I've played the game since beta, since before the game drops, and I've played it. I've played every season from beginning to end except 2, and I played most of those seasons. So I've played. I've got a pretty good idea of how the game's evolved from beginning to end. It's definitely evolved a lot since launch, and I think for the better of the game. I do feel like, although previous seasons have been really fun, Season 7's definitely been one of the more fun ones for me. And one of the main reasons for that is because I think, obviously, the addition of the armory, brilliant. We needed this for a long time.
Absolutely.
That helps a lot with wanting to play more builds. It's the season I've played the most builds on. I normally do get to about 3 or 4 builds, and then I've kind of, in the past, got to a point where it's like, I'm not sure I want to level up from scratch again and do all this. But now, the ability to just take my class, I've got every class level to 60 now. So if I fancy playing a build, you just got to swap over. You need to get some gear, but you can off you go and have a bit of fun. So that's been really good. I mean, that's really good for the game. I do feel like the game is a bit too fast right now. And I know that they're trying to address that a little bit next season. I actually quite like the fact that the speed of the game can change season to season. It gives you a different feel. You probably don't want exactly the same feel every season. Otherwise, it just becomes a bit monotonous. But I think it was so fast this season that by the end of the first day, a lot of people had basically completed the majority of what the content is there. And that the whole question of endgame aside, if you're blasting through the entire game and leaving yourself with virtually nothing left to aspire to do by the end of one day, because it's so easy to do that, then you've pretty much got nothing to chew on. there's a few other things I think that could be improved here. From my personal point of view, I mean, more aspirational content would be really nice, like actually truly difficult boss fights. And there are definitely got a few bits coming, at least from what I experienced on the PCR, that people will find more challenging. Yep. I wouldn't necessarily say they're like really, really hard, but they're definitely more challenging than what we've got. And I think it was a bit overshadowed by the fact that we were able to cheat ourselves to Paragon 300. So, and all the boss powers, definitely. I actually think those fights are going to be quite difficult. So that's going to be really cool. I'm actually looking forward to that. Something that's actually truly not easy to just do. And the one thing I feel like we do lack right now is just, for the lack of better term, like the item chase. For me, it's a little bit too easy to obtain absolutely everything in the game. The thing is that it's the audience they're trying to appeal to, so I kind of get it. But at the same time, by not having anything that you know that very few people are going to have, and you can drop it anywhere, but it's super rare, and when you've got it, it's going to be godly. But you know that's just like a 1 in a million sort of drop. By having nothing in the game that's like this, you are going to get your build complete, and you're going to have nothing to chase for. Okay. You lose those wow moments. Like if I look back to when I was a kid playing, let's use Diablo 2 as an example here. You could play for 300 hours and then you'll drop your first burr rune, and the amount of hype you'll get because you're like, oh my God, I dropped a burr rune, and you know how valuable that's going to be. Now I'm not suggesting Diablo 4 should move entirely in that direction, but something more to chew on, to chase. In that regards, I think, I honestly think the Citadel would be a really good candidate for something like this. I've only done it once this season. I did it the other day with another fellow content creator, friend, because we were just doing it for fun. But there's not really been any particular purpose to go and do it. And I think that would be a good opportunity to maybe explore there. If I was to be asked, what would be your one suggestion of where you could do something like this? Yeah. But so I feel like the game's sort of in a position where it's got a pretty good foundation. No matter what anyone else says, the game is actually quite fun. That's why people still play it. It's really good at the multiplayer stuff. I have a lot of fun playing with the community and other content creators, and playing all the builds I do. I wouldn't play as much as I did if I didn't. Fun is number one for me.
I agree.
And I feel like Season 8 definitely looks like it's set to improve the game. I think it's going to improve it because it will make the journey a bit better, smoother, probably. Right. So I think that's going to be a step in the right direction. I don't think everyone's going to love it, but I think once people climatize back down from the speed of this season, they might like it more than they think. Okay. And I'm pretty hopeful that the game will improve over time as well. And that's coming from someone who's an avid gamer, content creator, and I, on the other side, as a programmer and a gamer developer myself. Yep. I actually do understand how much work goes into making a game like this, and how much passion a lot of these people probably have. So I'm usually quite empathetic to this kind of things, and I'm hopeful that these guys will provide. They'll give us more stuff to chew on and some really cool content, and I look forward to what's coming in future. To be honest,
yeah, me too. Something that somebody brought up to me the other day, which I thought was actually a really, really cool idea. You give it a really, really, really low drop chance, but a mythic unique that can carry over from season to season. Make it general across the whole entire class pool. It has like a 0.01% chance to drop, but if somebody gets lucky enough to find it, they can keep it from every season and just keeps on updating. So you have an advantage right off the bat on that really lucky chance to drop. I thought it was a kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, this is the great thing about games like this and game development. There's so many ways you could solve the same puzzle.
So many ways.
That's just one of many different things they could do. I mean, it's quite an intriguing idea. That's definitely not something I've seen done in these games, because it's pretty typical. The games completely reset the economy and off you go.
Yeah.
And you might carry over, like in Diablo 4, your renown, which is much needed in that game, but in most cases you're pretty much starting from flat. So that's quite an interesting idea for sure.
Yeah. All right, well, that was the last question that I have for you. Thank you for your time. Now, before we go anywhere, I wanted you to shout out what you got going on in your content creation world. Let everybody know where they can find you at.
Okay, so I'm mostly live on a Twitch. Yep, Imortilize. I do a little bit on YouTube. I'm going to be getting into Path of Exile 2, as a lot of people will be over the next week or two, with a little bit of Diablo still, playing with the community, trying out some more off-meta builds, and just playing some of the builds I haven't had a chance to play up until now. So that's mostly what I'll be focused on. I want to try and get a bit of Last Epoch in as well. We're absolutely blessed in April with all of the ARPG content to cover if you want to, and then season 8 Diablo 4 will be down on the ground full throttle when that drops. I will likely do a 24-hour stream on the release date and blast and try and get to T4. We'll see how that goes, because none of us really know how difficult that's going to be, given we don't know what's coming since the PTR, so we'll see. But that's pretty much it for me right now, and yeah, just carry on having a good time, having fun.
Thank you. You guys heard it here. Go check out Imortilize on Twitch and on YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the clip side.